I am confident that the people that are watching this video have encountered someone in their lives where you were not necessarily nice, but you were kind, and people saw this as a weakness. And then you've also met people that are just hung up on and high strung on vanity. And whenever you hold up a mirror to them, they cannot take it. They don't know how to handle this. And so they treat you with disrespect and disregard. And until you're able to fully comprehend what exactly is happening and how exactly things are happening, by the time you realize, okay, this is not working, everything that's going on here is pretty much an illusion. Like, this person doesn't even exist. This is a person that has completely propped up a fantasy of an image of what they want to portray the world to be. Nobody really knows who that person is except for God. Not even that person. They don't really know who they are. And so they'll treat you like you're worth less than you really are. And these people will treat you like you don't deserve the respect that you deserve. And people will not even have any kind of empathy for you. And sure, like, maybe they might be sometimes people can be a bit harsh. You know, for example, somebody like David Goggins, that guy, if you don't understand his message, that guy comes across as a complete asshole. I'll just say and be frank with you guys. He comes across as a really, really dick move kind of a guy. Like, he just does not hold back. That guy is an absolute savage when it comes to this kind of just brutal honesty and raw and real truth. And if you don't understand what he's actually saying, even though he does have empathy, you might not think it to be the case. You might think that this is something else. This is some kind of form of weird, hedonistic pleasure on pain kind of a thing. But the people that I'm talking about are not necessarily going to be people like David Goggins. Number one, because nobody's really like David Goggins. But number two is that the people that I'm referring to are more along the lines of cluster B personality disorder types. These people are generally narcissists, or any kind of form of hedonists, or they're pessimists, or they're people that don't want to take optimism or realism and either into consideration. These people are the kinds of people that cannot see beyond good and evil. And speaking of good and evil, I've got the Beyond Good and Evil book here. I want to go through a little bit today because I think this is going to be a pertinent section to talk about and refer to, and what exactly Nietzsche, who is the author of Beyond Good and Evil, I personally think this is his second best work. His best work is Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And although Nietzsche was against Christianity and religion and all these things, he wasn't necessarily an enemy to it. He was a very much a big critique of it, but he understood at the intellectual level, he understood that the Christian doctrine and the traditions there really gave way to Western civilization as a whole. But this I want to talk about specifically. This is going to be passage 225, paragraph 225 from this book. I like how there's not really any chapters in these books that he's got, most for the most part. There's just sections, and I kind of like that, actually. But anyway, we'll go into this now. So whether it be hedonism, pessimism, utilitarianism, or hedonism, all of these modes of thinking, which measure the worth of things according to pleasure or pain, that is, according to accompanying circumstances and secondary considerations, are plausible modes of thought and naivetes, which everyone conscious of the creative powers and an artist's conscience will look down upon with scorn, though not without sympathy. Okay, so that's a whole lot, but we're going to take this section by section in this paragraph here that he's written, and we're going to break it down. So whether it be hedonism, pessimism, utilitarianism, or hedonism. Okay, so hedonism is obviously the pursuit of the fleshly desires. Pessimism is just not seeing the bright side of things. Utilitarianism is seeing things to be must have an equal outcome. And then hedonism is essentially the misfortune of loving like the free-spirited of things that isn't actually free-spirited things. And he says this, that all these modes of thinking measure the worth of things according to pleasure and pain. Okay, so he's speaking about everybody. Most of the people in the world are belonging to these modes of thought. And this is exactly why people are not going to understand your worth most of the time, and while you'll be worth more down the line by the time they realize what you were worth beforehand, because they only measure things in regard to pleasure and pain. They only measure the utility of something in regard to whether it brings them pleasure or brings them pain. They're not looking at a deeper side of this, okay? So then he goes on to say, right, like these are basically naivetes. These are people that are naive and don't even know they're naive when it comes to these deep philosophical thoughts, which everyone conscious of the creative powers and the artist's conscience will look down upon with scorn. So people that know how to create, people that know how to create and know what it takes to build something in their lives, look at these kinds of modes of thought as, which pessimism, hedonism, etc., as something to scorn, basically. And I understand, this is something I also probably ought to have mentioned earlier, is that I understand that Nietzsche is not necessarily godly, but he was a genius. He was one in a billion. So, and I think he brings a lot of interesting insight to the landscape of thought. But I also think that because he's so high level altitude of thinking, it can be challenging to understand what exactly he's saying. So that's why we're breaking it down. And so then he says, we look down upon the scorn, those with creative powers, look down upon them with scorn, but not without sympathy. Okay, he doesn't say empathy, he says sympathy. And sympathy for you, to be sure that it is not sympathy as you understand it. It is not sympathy for social distress, for society with its sick and misfortuned, the hereditary vicious and defective who lie on the ground around us. Okay, so what exactly is he saying there? He's saying that it's not necessarily the sympathy for, that the kind of sympathy that other people with these modes of thought that he talked about at the very beginning want to believe that they should have for these misfortunate characters or spirits. Okay, so the creative people have a different kind of understanding when it comes to approaching sympathy for people in general, okay? So still less is it sympathy for the grumbling, vexed, revolutionary slave classes who strive after power when they call it freedom. So here there's a little bit of context that needs to be had, because when he says slave classes, he's not necessarily, I mean, you could see it as him saying slaves as in back in his day when slaves were, I'll just say this, he sees it more as a slave to thought, as a slave to your own mind. That's what he's thinking about it. And as he says, they call it freedom. Being a slave to the grumbling and the vexed and the revolutionary slave classes, these people that want to believe they're doing something for the better of society, and then they call it freedom, but it's actually not freedom, it's actually bondage. Then he says, our sympathy, meaning the people with creative powers, is loftier and further sighted sympathy. We see how man dwarfs himself and how you dwarf him. And there are moments when we view your sympathy with an indescribable anguish when we resist it, when we regard your seriousness as more dangerous than any kind of levity. Okay, so now this is where I critique Nietzsche here, because I can see what he's saying when he says that man dwarfs himself. If you are staying around people, for example, that have absolutely no contingency plan with regard to where they're going in life, how they're going to be strategically configuring their livelihoods in general, these are going to be the kinds of people that will suck your life away and will not value you. And the longer that you stay with these kinds of people, the more you dwarf yourself. Okay, so I understand what he's saying here, but you have to also remember that Nietzsche, even though he didn't necessarily believe in God, he was the one that said God is dead. He also said that man himself was something to surpass, and I think that is true. You're supposed to surpass yourself, but you're not necessarily supposed to surpass God. That's where a lot of people, like Nietzsche, for example, who have crazy intellect, you might notice that a lot of highly intellectual people are not necessarily followers of Christ. And it's because they see a lot of the logistics behind this, but they're not necessarily valuing it. It's kind of like they see there's utility with the culture and such. Even Richard Dawkins, one of the quote-unquote four horsemen of religion in modern day times, along with Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and I'm forgetting the fourth horseman. Daniel Dennett. That's the other guy, Daniel Dennett. And these are the kinds of people that they see the value of whatever, but yet they don't want to have value for it. So they see it, but they're like, nah, And so people, and it's not to say that only stupid people, okay, because people will always get these words twisted somehow. Some of these people that watch these videos will always twist my words, but the point is that people, it's not that people are stupid that only follow Christ. It's that people that are open to being wrong and compassionate and industrious and conscientious simultaneously. Those are the kinds of people that are more often, as a subset, more relating to God and able to have a greater connection to God. And this is one of the reasons why I think psychedelics, for example, induces these mythical experiences, because it enhances those kinds of character traits within your personality type. But what also, going back here to what he's saying, is that we view your sympathy, so we creative people with creative powers view your sympathy with indescribable anguish. So all of these hedonists and pessimists and utilitarianists and eudaimonians, these people, they don't actually have the kind of sympathy and empathy that they think that they would like to have for certain people that are defective in society or misfortunate, as Nietzsche says here. So, and we think that they're quote unquote, we creative people, that's what Nietzsche is saying here. We creative people actually view your seriousness for the defective, and to have this false sympathy, this serious false sympathy for the defective and the misfortunate, is more dangerous than trying to laugh about it. Okay, that's what he's saying there. And this is exactly why people don't always understand your worth until it's too late. They don't understand your worth until things happen down the line and you're able to prove your worth, even though you don't necessarily go out to try to prove something all the time. But it's not like you have something to prove, but you just, by being who you are, you can prove who you are. That's the best way to think about it. And so we creative people view the seriousness of this false sympathy more dangerous, because that's exactly what it is. It is more dangerous. And this is where I agree with Nietzsche, is that people that have this false sense of sympathy and, oh, you think they want to care for you, and yet they take advantage of you. And they say they want to do this and they say they want to do that, and yet they completely contradict their words with their actions. And they take their words more seriously than their actions. Those are the most dangerous kinds of people. People that take words more seriously than actions and symbols. Because actions and symbols are way more subconscious. They're way more at a subconscious level than anything else. So he goes on to say, you want, if possible, and there is not a more foolish, if possible, to do away with suffering. It really seems that we would rather have it increased and made worse than it has ever been. Well-being, as you understand it, is certainly not the goal. Okay. It seems to us an end, a condition which at once renders man ludicrous and contemptible, and makes his destruction desirable. Aha. So people that are not creative want destruction of society. And they do this because they have this false pretending of wanting to care for you. But and not just for you, but for people at large, maybe as well, right? They want to have this false pretending of whatever happens. And it's absolutely not true. And that is, they actually are desiring the suffering of people so that they can take gains from it. Okay, so he goes on to say that this is the tension of the soul in misfortune and communicates to its energy. Its shattering in view of rack and ruin, its inventiveness and bravery in undergoing, enduring, interpreting, and exploitive misfortune. And whatever depth, mystery, disguise, spirit, artifice, or greatness has been bestowed upon the soul, has it not been bestowed through suffering, through the discipline of great suffering? So this is where he's saying that people, they know that discipline and with suffering, on the other side of that is greatness. God transforms that into greatness, although Nietzsche probably wouldn't say that, but God transforms suffering into beauty. He transforms suffering into greatness. And this is, I mentioned David Goggins at the beginning of this. David Goggins is a real life example of pain turned into something transformative and invigorative and just truly sensational. I mean, the man has just done things that seem unhuman and inhuman, and yet he is. So he goes on further. Nietzsche says, so it is sympathy against sympathy, but to repeat it once more, there are higher problems than the problems of pleasure and pain and sympathy. And all the systems of philosophy which deal only with these are naivetes. Okay, so people that are only focused on pleasure and pain, they're stuck in this mode, and they like, oh, well, we don't want to hurt these people. We don't want to do this. They take this seriously, but they're taking it so seriously that they're not seeing the bigger picture. That's what Nietzsche is saying here. And that's really what I want to end this on. Because the people that don't value you, the people that don't understand you and don't want to understand, or they just don't know how to understand, and they are vindictive because of it. It's not that they're genuinely just not understanding or not understanding your value. These people will, because they're taking their false sympathy so seriously for the misfortune, they're completely missing the bigger picture of what's actually possible for mankind. And so this false sympathy actually destroys and dwarfs, as to use Nietzsche's vocabulary, that actually dwarfs mankind as a whole, to have this false sympathy. And I think he's right about that. But I think it's only through the grace of God. This is where I think maybe Nietzsche might disagree with me, but it's only through the grace of God and faith in him that we can transcend this kind of suffering into seeing the something more. But as long as people try to focus on this false sympathy for the misfortunate and all this stuff, I think Nietzsche is right. It is more dangerous. It is more dangerous than anything else. And only people that are highly creative will be able to see this. And I think that's another testament to godliness. Godly people are very creative. Truly godly people are very creative and intuitive and instinctual. And that's exactly what we need to get back to some degree, because society is very animalistic right now. And I don't think they even realize how animalistic they are. And all the weird stuff is going on. There's a lot of weird stuff happening. But I do hope that this was useful and insightful. This was something kind of different that I wanted to do in this video. I do hope that you were able to get some utility and benefit from this. If you did get this far in the video, go ahead and type in the comments section creative power, so that we all know that this is going to be useful and utilizing for you as far as information down the line. If you do want to join the Regal Change Academy, where we are building an elite spiritual army, where we have men and women that are godlike savages, and the women that are warm, inviting, feminine, empathetic women, feel free to join. We have the free Discord community, and we also have the paid community. We have the ebook that I just put out a few days ago in the free Discord channel now. And we also have other free resources for meditation, healing, and from narcissism specifically, fitness, etc. In the paid community, we're finishing up the Art of War class series right now. The Art of War class series, these class series in the paid community are similar to how we just kind of went through Beyond Good and Evil here, is where we take the passages or these reading tasks, and then we discuss them as a whole, and then we have tasks, task sheets to go along with the reading that we do. So in the Art of War, for example, that's exactly what we've been doing for the past 6 weeks, now 7 weeks. And we're going to be wrapping up tomorrow with that class series. We're going to have new class series come down the line. But if you don't want to join in the class series, we also have other classes that you can take on your own time for the Godlike Savage classes, dream interpretation, entrepreneurship, etc. We've got something for everybody in there. We also have weekly Bible studies, as well as a weekly Regal Assembly call where we talk about a variety of different topics and subjects. I do appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to this. I also appreciate everybody moving from the YouTube platform over to X, Rumble, and Instagram. I appreciate your guys' support and the extra support, and peace be with you all. Till next time.